Commercial pilot operations for compensation or hire. This is a very important topic for you to understand. Guarantee you on your commercial pilot FA check ride, you will be asked scenarios and the examiner will be asking you, can you legally do this operation? Some terms that you should understand. So during your study prep for class here, you should have gone through these terms. Common purpose. That's one that's not in the regulations. So the FAA never defined it, but NTSB law judges have defined it in their decisions. And so you would have read a few case laws that talked about common purpose, where the pilot and passenger share a reason to fly in the first place. This is where a pilot picked the destination and a passenger also has a reason to go to that same destination. That's common purpose, and they may go ahead and share the expenses via pro rata. If the passenger is ever picking the destination, that's an illegal air taxi operation. It's always pilot chosen. The advisory circular out there on the truth in aircraft leasing gives us these very important next three terms here, where a wet lease is the leasing of an aircraft with at least one flight crew member. That's important to understand, as that would indicate that the leasing company has operational control. The operational control definition is the person or entity who has the authority for deciding when a flight is initiated or scheduled and conducting the flight. So operational control, that would be the boss calling you up and saying, get the corporate jet ready for a flight on Friday. We're going to San Diego. That's operational control. Another example, Western has operational control over the flight operations here. At the moment, we're not allowing anybody to go out and fly. If you wanted to go fly, we wouldn't let you because we have operational control. Another example of operational control. The boss calls you up Friday morning and says, we're canceling the flight to San Diego. That's operational control. You got to understand that. A dry lease is simply the aircraft being leased only. And the leasee would have operational control then. Now, some more terms. Air carrier is defined by the FAA as to engage in air transportation. Kind of a very vague term. Commercial operator, to engage in air commerce for compensation or hire. You should understand what a corporate operator is. And that's a pilot's employee who flies company aircraft. Then there's a group out there called the National Business Aircraft Association, NBAA. And the National Business Aircraft Association has a small aircraft exemption, which allows cost and time sharing for small aircraft. This would be under the Part 91 rules. Your 501. Yes.
So under corporate operator, it says a pilot employee who flies company aircraft. Couldn't any airline pilot fall into that definition? Or is there a difference?
Yes, there's a huge difference of who is being allowed to fly. So corporate operation, company employee, company aircraft, company business. Airlines, fly anybody.
Oh,
So two different realms there, yeah. So what can you do as a commercial pilot? This is the simplest way to begin. You can be hired to fly someone else's airplane. So you can be hired to fly someone else's airplane. That's the simplest starting point for our discussion of what you can do legally as a commercial pilot. 3 areas. We summed them all up here. We'll go over them individually here. But what can you do to be hired and compensated? Our 3 areas would be common carriage, operations not involving common carriage or private carriage, and Part 91 general aviation operations and carriage. Go over these individually here. We'll start off with the easy ones under Part 91 general aviation carriage. What can I do after I become a commercial pilot? So you'll become a commercial pilot soon enough, hopefully this year, right? In FAR Part 119.1, it has a list of exemptions that are exempt from FAR Part 119, which is commercial operations. And this exemption here is everything that you absolutely can do once you become a commercial pilot. So we look at student instruction. So you can become a flight instructor. Nonstop sightseeing flights within 25 miles of the airport. You can conduct ferry flights, like delivering an aircraft. You could conduct a training flight. This would be like getting hired as a corporate pilot and you're being trained by another corporate pilot who's not a flight instructor. Aerial work. A lot of things under aerial work. It could be application, like crop dusting. It could be firefighting. It could be power line or pipeline patrol, bird chasing, fish spotting, photographing opportunities. You can conduct parachute operations. You may conduct Part 133 operations, emergency mail service. You can take part in 91.321, carriage of people in elections, or conduct small UAS operations under Part 107. So any of those are not applicable to commercial operations in Part 119. So we just do those under Part 91. In addition to that, you could be just a corporate pilot. And if I say corporate pilot, we can also add the word contract pilot. You can also operate under FAR 91 subpart F, which is effectively large turbine aircraft operation, or use those rules with the NBAA small aircraft exemption. There's also Part 91 subpart K on fractional ownership operations. So important part, down here at the bottom, these operations are conducted without any additional certificates. So that means you just, once you get that commercial pilot certificate, you're eligible or qualified for these operations. The next part is just helping you understand corporate aviation a little bit better and recognizing those situations. If you're involved in a corporate aviation, you're either flying aircraft that are owned by the company that's hired you or by the individual person that's hired you. It doesn't have to be a corporation. It can be an individual person who owns an airplane and you're hired to fly that airplane. And you're transporting either persons or cargo that are associated with that company or individual. And then you're conducting that business to other places. It's only company business or that individual person's personal business. And the pilot is either an employee of the company hired as a pilot or they're a contract pilot. They could be hired by the company or individual person. So once you become a commercial pilot, you might walk over to the Stryker Corporation in Kalamazoo and present your resume and get hired as a corporate pilot to fly their jets around. Or you might be hired on as the contract replacement pilot as the need arises. Yes. Oh, they can lease, yeah. Part 91 operations. Under subpart F, that's the large turbine operation. It allows for sharing certain expenses. Or with the NBAA small aircraft exemption, you can share certain expenses. And subpart K, fractional ownership, has ways to share expenses on it. Okay. The next one to look at is common carriage. When we say carriage, it means we're carrying people or cargo. And when we say common, we're talking about anybody, not limited to a specific group or company. Example of common carriage for an airline would be Southwest Airlines. As long as you can afford the price of the ticket, you can fly on their airplane to wherever they're going. Now, these operations are governed under FAR Part 119, commercial operations. And more specifically, they could be included under the FAR Part 121, and you should know that title as scheduled airlines, or under Part 135, you should know that title, which is air taxi and on-demand operations. Regardless, common carriage, which is open to anybody, right, requires the operation to have an air carrier certificate. Not the pilot, right? It's the operation. So if you wanted to start up your own airline, you would then go through the process to obtain an air carrier certificate. So FAA looks at the definition of common carriage as a willingness to furnish transportation to any person who wants it. We always think about the general public. If you can afford the price of the ticket, then you can be carried on that aircraft. The FAA does test for the elements of common carriage if they think something is going on, if someone's conducting an illegal operation. They'll look to see, is there a willingness to transport persons or property from place to place and for compensation. So that's their test that they're applying. A term that you're going to hear with common carriage is holding out. I'll give you the visual idea here. It's like you're holding out a sign saying, I'm a commercial pilot and will fly you anywhere you want to go. Right? But you're holding out your services. Ways that you hold out your services to the public would be through advertising. Whatever means of advertising, saying, I'm a commercial pilot and I'll take you anywhere you want to go. Right? Or having someone be an agent to get people that you fly anywhere they want to go. Even a reputation to serve anybody that comes to you. All these are conducted under FAR Part 121 or Part 135, and they require the entity to have an air carrier certificate. And here's an example of an air carrier certificate. In FAR 119.5, it does state that no person may operate as a direct air carrier or commercial operator without an appropriate certificate. And those certificates would either be for a Part 135 air taxi operation or Part 121 scheduled airline operation. So questions on common carriage? It's common to anybody. Yes.
Are there really big differences in terms of the reg between Part 121 and 135 operations?
There's a lot of similarities between them, but 121 does go a little deeper. All right, the other one to talk about here is operations not involving common carriage, or you might often hear it called private carriage. You may hear it in other ways expressed. They all mean the same thing, so they're all, that's why I got them all in that orange box right there. If you hear the terms private carriage or persons, cargo transported without compensation or hire. Or if you hear operations not transporting persons or cargo. Or if you hear non-common carriage, it's all the same thing that we're talking about here. It's private carriage. Non-common, meaning we're not holding out our services to anybody. Okay? In fact, we're very specific on who we are offering services to. These are governed by FAR 119.23 under commercial operations, but specifically, it could be conducted under Part 135, air taxi on-demand, which also would include private carriers and indirect air carriers, or possibly under Part 125, which is the operation of a large aircraft. The bottom line here is these operations do require a commercial operating certificate for the entity, not the pilot, but for the entity. Let's take a look at how the FAA discovers these. For non-common carriage or private carriage, you are providing the airplane to conduct business. And if you're providing the airplane, you're providing either for 121 operations or 135 operations. Okay? And it's the carriage for hire of one or select few customers. It normally involves a contract with a long-term basis. Then you're operating under 121 or 135. So an example of this might be a company offers transportation services to sports teams. So they're not open to just anybody, but only to sports teams. That's the whole, all their customers are. Compensation is defined by the FAA as pretty much anything. You just look up the definition of compensation, it's received as an equivalent for services, for debt, for loss, for injury. And it could be money. It could be reduced insurance costs, because that means you pay less money, so you get more money to work with. It could be logbook hours. And logbook hours would possibly get you a new certificate or reduced insurance costs. Or you could be trading services. You give flights to the local butcher who gives you half a cow in compensation for it. So FAA considers compensation in a lot of areas, not just money.